Yes, indeed, folks, the sounds of Ed Guy nailed to the wheel. My name is Total Biscuit, and you are listening to Blue Please here on WoW Radio, the best solo-hosted WoW show in the world. Yes, I will put that out there, because I think it might currently be the only solo-hosted WoW show in the world. It's all good. Bragging is fine if you're in an empty room. Now, I have more topics to discuss, and we certainly do not have time to muck about. So I'm going to muck about. I'm going to read some emails, because we're on the subject of 10 versus 25 mans. We want to know which camp you fall into as regards to what do you think it should be. Should they be separate but equal, or should one be easier than the other? So I've got some things to have a look at. We'll go to Richard Knox, who says this: make the raid where back in pre-TBC, where you need everyone to work as a team, not where you can take 8 people to a 10-man and 20 people to a 25-man, down the boss and then make 25-man harder. Just FYI, pre-TBC you could do that an awful lot. In fact, the only encounters you really couldn't do it on were some of the harder Nax ones and maybe Cthulhu. You could slack in pretty much any other instance. Really. I mean, Molten Core, you only really needed 25 out of 40 people, and you could have 15 people standing around doing nothing. In fact, we did it with 25 people incredibly easily, and that was at level appropriate. So no, I think you have a very rose-tinted view of pre-TBC if you actually think it was like that. In fact, I would say, to be quite honest, the TBC was the one that nailed it the best, where you really did have to have all your 25 people going, mainly because of the enrage timers. Hey TB, this is from Limus, and he says this: I would say that the 10 and 25 man raids should be of the same difficulty with the same quality of loot. The amount of players you do a raid with does not determine your skill. A group of 10 players can be of the same skill level as a group of 25 and therefore should get the same loot. The only thing that Blizzard has to keep in the back of their minds is that making content accessible and challenging for both sides does not equal making content easy, as it seems they sometimes view 10-man players as unskilled players. They just have a limited amount of time or prefer this kind of playstyle. Yeah, that does sum it up. I think the preference for playstyle is the biggest argument. Having limited time is really not a valid argument because 10-mans take about as long as 25-mans. Indeed, I've actually seen them take longer. The amount of time you have is not relevant to how many people you can get in a raid. You could have, if you only have like a few hours a week and you find 24 other people with only a few hours a week, you can still do it. It's the same argument people made. It's like, oh well, WoW raiding isn't casual friendly because you need a lot of people and I don't really have a lot of time to play. Okay, fine, just make a big guild then. Now, I've seen casual guilds have 200, 300 players and field multiple raids. And it's like, yeah, 75% of your guild can be offline at any given time and you can still field 2 raids worth of players. That's how you do it. If you have issues, you just join a big guild. And by big, it doesn't have to mean amazingly good. You can just join one of those big Zerg guilds. They do the job. So, no, I don't believe that saves time or actually benefits anyone with limited time. To be honest, it's about the coordination of several people and just finding the kind of people that will be able to raid at the same time as you. However, the playstyle argument I think is the strongest. I do believe that, yes, it is completely valid to want to simply raid with 9 other people instead of 24 other people. It's more personal. You can just get all your friends together to do it. You don't have to invite randoms. There's less loot drama. It's a little bit more focused, and yes, you can focus on the individual people within the raid. And indeed, you can have one of every class at the moment, which is kind of cool. Anyway, let's continue. More emails on the 10 and 25 man subject. This is from Nairafen. He says this: hey TB, looking at Blizzard, what Blizzard has done with loot at least suggests that they intended 10 and 25 man to be different. Elements of heroism are obtained from both normal heroics and 10 man raids, which means Blizzard considers them to be of equal level. There is a clear separation from 10 to 25 man level content there, and as we know, loot equals difficulty in theory anyway. Considering this, I think Blizzard intended 25 man to be easier, but since it was also easy, they've pushed bring the player, not the class philosophy into the game, things ended up being pretty much the same. I assume you mean 10-man to be easier, not 25-man, because that makes no logical sense. Both 10 and 25-mans are mind-numbingly easy, so the only difference is how much of a difference one player makes overall. That's a pretty clumsy sentence, but whatever. Which makes 10-man slightly harder. In my opinion, it is a mistake, and I think making them separate but equal is a good idea, since it allows for choice and variety, but I believe Blizzard will finally make up their mind when releasing Ulduar, hopefully. Yes, indeed, I do hope they make the call one way or the other. It is rather important for people to realise that they've just got to make the call. A bad plan is better than no plan at all. I don't like it when things are all over the place and it's just like, hey, there seems to be random levels of difficulty for no apparent reason at all. They make the argument that, hey, Wrath is friendly to the, it's raiding 101, but it's not. because the 10-man stuff is all over the place in difficulty. It's completely inconsistent. If you try to teach people how to raid, and then we go from 10 and 25-man, you realise that 10-man was actually harder than the 25. You're not teaching them anything other than the world's been turned upside down and shaken a lot, and stuff's still all over the floor, waiting to be picked up and put back in its proper place. Next one. This one's from Evil Utaku. He's a level 80 druid on Bailgun US, and he says this: Hey, TB, I'm a relatively new raider. My guild was originally an alt guild with some of my friends that I used to work with. Their raiding guild broke up and they decided to take the alt guild into raiding. Now on a good day we can get 9 people on at the same time. We would have to go into a massive recruiting drive in order to get into 25-man raiding. So far, we are perfectly content to run 10-man content. We've attempted Sarf 1 Drake and had a blast. I think the 10-man content should be an entirely different instance from the 25-man. I would like the difficulty to be roughly the same. Maybe the gear from the 10-man would be useful for the 25-man. I believe that the logistics of getting 25 people to work together is part of the difficulty of the encounters and should have better rewards. Yeah, it's a pretty difficult argument to make, really, to say that, hey, you can... let's gear up a 10-mans for 25-man if you want to have it as the same difficulty, because that just doesn't make any sense. At the moment, though, that's what's happening. And what actually bothers me, and this is something we haven't brought up yet, is that a lot of guilds are actually having to do the 10-mans in order to do the 25-mans just for gear. And they're doing the same instance twice. They're being forced to effectively do 10-man and farm it till ad nauseum, and then do 25-man and then farm it to ad nauseum, realising, of course, that 25-man is pretty much identical. Which is kind of lousy, because when you graduated from 10 to 25s or 20 to 40s in the older world content, it was actually a different instance to play, not the same one with a couple of extra abilities. That's why I don't like heroics as regards to doing them. I don't do heroics, I'm not a big fan of them. I understand the purpose behind them, but I do think they are incredibly dull, and farming them is not something that I would ever really want to do. Now, anyway, that's the end of that. We will talk maybe a little bit about that later on, assuming we have time, which we probably won't, and we need to move on to the next topic. And that specifically, this time around, is Healthstones. Yes, indeed. Now, there is a lot of uproar about the Healthstone thing, and a lot of people are seeing it as Blizzard caving into casuals, and caving into people who are entitled. Now, let me ask you one question. When was the last time that you actually saw people asking for a reduction in the Hearthstone cooldown? Because I don't remember ever seeing that. I read the forums on a daily basis. I have never seen that on the EU side at all. In the 4 years that I have been reading those forums, I've never seen it happen. Really? Has it actually happened? Maybe the US side has. I don't know. But one way or the other, it seems to be like a pretty pitiful concern. I'm not bothered about the fact that they're reducing the cooldown to 30 minutes. It's not a slap in the face. It's not being kind of catering to these entitled casuals. Because it doesn't make a blind bit of difference. It's convenient for everybody. Except maybe for mages. But even then, for mages, it's convenient. We could set our Hearthstone in a ridiculous place and use it to get back there more quickly. How is that not a good thing? Why? Maybe you could argue that, oh, well, it makes exploration of the world crap, but everyone's already seen it all. It doesn't matter. Convenience is more important now. We have seen the Barrens 20,000 times. We have seen everything 20,000 times. We fly over it, and we alt-tab out, or we go into Windows and we read something else. We Hearthstone there, we get a portal there, we do anything that doesn't involve walking or riding. We don't care about the content anymore. We are finished with it. It's fine, it's done. Just deal with it. Exploration is not something that is in the game anymore, and that's kind of sad, but that's just the way all MMOs always end up going. Unless they have randomly or procedurally generated content, they will go down that route, where they will be explored, every nook and cranny will be emptied, and a bright flashlight poked into every single corner. And everything will be found. Skeletons in the closet, cobwebs in the halls, and all. Removing some of the timer on Hearthstone does not ruin any aspect of the game that I can personally think of. Honestly. Why would it? Now, it does bring up an interesting question, however, and that's, why did they make the change in the first place? Again, change doesn't bother me. That's fine. Bring it on. I don't care. It's kind of convenient for my rogue. Not so much for my mage, but it really barely affects my actual play. I don't see a situation where I'm going to have to hop back and forth between areas of the game that I can't just fly to, and just kick back and maybe watch some videos in the meantime, or read some books, or play another game while I'm flying along. Yes, some of us can do that. I don't see that being an issue. I don't see that being a factor or a problem in any respect. But it does bring up the question as to why it was put in the game. And you've got to have a look at the idea of happy money versus unhappy money. Now, this is a concept that some of you may not be familiar with. The idea is this. There is a debate as to whether or not money is just simply money, i.e. subscribers. Subscribers paying every month. Is there a difference between unhappy subscribers and happy subscribers? Is there a difference? If they are still subscribed, is there a difference from a business perspective? The answer, of course, being, well, not really. At least as far as I can tell. If you're paying, you're paying. Now, people who are unhappy, of course, depending on the level of unhappiness, are at risk of quitting. But then again, happy players are also at risk of quitting due to a wide variety of possible things that interfere with their playstyle, or maybe they just get bored. They could leave WoW thinking, well, you know, I've had my fill for the moment, I'm going to go do something else. And I've done that frequently. I generally don't quit because I'm unhappy with the game. I'm just kind of like, it's run its course for the time being. I'll come back when there's some new content. I'm going to go play something else for a while. Hey, I've got a Lotro account, and Lotro actually turned out to be pretty good. Maybe I'll actually get around to playing it this weekend. Unfortunately, since I'm now raiding again, it's something that I was probably going to have to go on the back burner for a while. Is there a difference between happy and unhappy money? Is there a point in catering to unhappy money? Well, to some degree, yes. If unhappy money is there for a very good reason, and unhappy money is unhappy because they have run out of content, then yes, catering to those people is paramount, because if you run out of content, you stop playing. Most normal people do. They don't treat the game like a glorified AOL chat. Whereas you make a change like this, and it's like, well, okay, does this make happy money happier? Possibly. Some people might be pleased by it. Most people, I would imagine, be pretty indifferent. It's kind of convenient. You know, this doesn't really make me any happier. At the moment, I'm happy money, but only because of what I'm doing. If I was just doing normal raiding and not doing, say, the level 60 stuff right now, I would probably be unhappy money. I'd be unhappy money because I have a lack of content. However, the promise of Ulduar and the fact that it's now on the PTR and probably going to be coming out very soon, it looks very cool, makes me happier money. At the end of the day, I'm still paying the same subscription fee that I would have been, whether it's happy or unhappy money. But the question is, who do you cater to? A change like this doesn't seem to cater to anybody, and that's something that's kind of odd. Changes to the game are often reactive, and sometimes a little bit knee-jerk reactive, and that is a bad thing. As, of course, we should be well aware by this point. Knee-jerk changes generally never end well. However, there are some changes which are a little bit more considered, and there are some changes which are just like whimsy. It's like Blizzard thinks, right, this has got to the stage now where this really doesn't matter anymore, we are doing this. It's like there was a change made a little while ago to the amount of gold that you could get from old school instances, and that doesn't affect most people. Indeed, it's actually had a negative effect on my playstyle because I play old school instances with Arcanist Belt, but it's not something that really bothers me all that much. But the question is, why did they make the change? I mean, that change is pretty much, as far as I can tell, universally unpopular. It doesn't benefit anyone. In fact, it is a disadvantage to everyone. If it's a disadvantage to anybody at all. Those who raid level 60 content, yeah, it's a disadvantage to them. Those who go into 60 instances to get extra money, it's a disadvantage to them too. So, you could argue that maybe it improves the economy, but I really can't see that argument holding much water. It is a very small change. And indeed, the Hearthstone cooldown is also a very small change. So perhaps you could argue that smaller changes are stuff that can simply be done on the basis of whimsy, and Blizzard will not really consider their impact on the player base because they feel they're simply too small. Now, of course, they do have an impact on player opinion, and they can change happy money to unhappy money. I don't believe that a small change like this could ever possibly change unhappy money to happy money, because unhappy money tends to have a better reason for being unhappy than a happy money has for being happy. You're totally confused now, I can tell. But regardless, it just puzzles me why they'd make little changes like this, but it also intrigues me to see the huge tidal wave of opinion that comes out of this. There are threads all over the forums about this. There are other forums as outside of the WoW forums that are actually discussing this. I believe it even popped up on our forums at some point. I saw it on Twitter feeds. I saw it on blogs. There's discussions going on about this tiny little change. I suppose it's kind of testament to just how passionate people can really get about WoW, and how in touch and in tune they are with the game's actual development, more so than most. They follow it to such a microcosmic degree that even the smallest change, it's like the chaos effect. Beating of a butterfly's wings halfway around the world causes a typhoon here. It's intriguing to watch. I don't really know what to make of it, but it's certainly good spectator sport. As for Hearthstones, well, you know what? In a couple of weeks when we get the change, Yeah, that's a little bit optimistic. In the next patch, when we get the change, we'll probably have forgotten all about it. And in a couple of years, we'll wonder, wow, Hearthstone's used to be an hour? Really? How inconvenient. My name's Total Biscuit, and you're listening to Blue Please here on WoW Radio. Get your topics in for the illusion of choice! Email themoloch@gmail.com, telling me what you want me to talk about for the last 15 or so minutes of the show. In the meantime, I'm going to play some Master Plan. I'll be right back after this. Enjoy.